September 15th, 1940 starts with German confidence so high it's almost casual. In a Luftwaffe briefing room on the French coast, officers stare at maps of southern England. RAF airfields are marked, color-coded, labeled as damaged or knocked out. Fighter strength is treated like a math problem that's already solved. Some German pilots are talking about the invasion barges gathering in nearby ports like it's a schedule, not a gamble. And then the afternoon missions launch. What happens over the next hours will crush a lot of German assumptions, not because the United States shows up to save the day, but because Britain doesn't collapse when it's supposed to. That point matters, especially for an American audience, because we grew up with the war's highlight reel. D-Day, the Bulge, the island fights in the Pacific. But in 1940, America is still officially neutral, an ocean away, selling weapons and supplies while staying out of direct combat. This fight belongs to Britain, full stop. And in the summer of 1940, Britain looks doomed. Germany has just rolled across Europe at a speed nobody expected. France falls in weeks. Belgium and the Netherlands go down. British and Allied troops escape at Dunkirk, but they leave mountains of equipment behind. On paper, it looks like Britain is standing alone with its back to the wall. German leaders believe the last obstacle is the Royal Air Force, specifically RAF Fighter Command. If Germany can smash Britain's fighters, then an invasion across the English Channel suddenly looks possible. That invasion plan has a name, Operation Sea Lion, and the Luftwaffe thinks it knows exactly how to clear the way. The formula has worked everywhere else. Hit hard, hit fast, and grind the enemy air force down. Destroy planes in the air and on the ground. Crater airfields. Kill or exhaust the pilots. Keep attacking until the other side can't get back up. German confidence isn't only bravado, it's numbers. The Luftwaffe can deploy roughly 3 times the aircraft fighter command can. German estimates put Britain at around 600 usable fighters. Germany can throw in something like 1,800 bombers and fighters. They've got the initiative, experienced crews, and one of the best fighters in the world in the Messerschmitt Bf 109. So from the German point of view, Britain's resistance doesn't look brave. It looks irrational. Churchill refuses to negotiate anyway, so Germany commits. The RAF becomes the target. The first serious phase kicks off on July 10th. In 1940, with attacks over the Channel, convoys, ports, coastal targets. These raids have a purpose beyond damage. Draw British fighters up and destroy them in combat. At first, German pilots feel like history is repeating. They've beaten everyone else. Why not Britain? They respect the Spitfire. Fast, sharp, a real fight. But the Hurricane makes up a big chunk of fighter command, and many Germans see it as older and easier prey. Early battles are brutal. British aircraft burn, pilots die, airfields take hits. But then something strange starts showing up in German reports. The kill ratios don't swing the way they're supposed to. The Luftwaffe expects the RAF to weaken day by day. Fewer fighters rising, fewer squadrons available, slower responses. Instead, every raid seems to meet serious resistance, not once in a while. Not on lucky days, consistently. German commanders begin asking the same question in different ways. If we've damaged so many airfields and shot down so many fighters, why are there still fighters coming up to meet us? By early August, the Luftwaffe runs into a problem that doesn't fit its playbook. The attrition strategy isn't delivering the collapse they predicted. Bomber crews start requesting heavier fighter escort because it still feels dangerous over England. And that makes no sense if the RAF is almost finished. Here's what the Germans can't properly see from the air. Britain isn't fighting this like a simple slugfest of planes versus planes. Britain is fighting it like a system. The first hidden piece of that system is sitting along the coast, chain home radar. It's not futuristic like modern radar, but it doesn't have to be. Britain has around 20 radar stations giving overlapping coverage of the Channel approaches. So when German formations assemble over France and lift off, Britain often knows they're coming before they reach English land. That changes everything. Fighter command doesn't have to waste fuel and pilots patrolling the skies at random, hoping to bump into raiders. It can wait. It can conserve strength. Then, when the raid's direction becomes clear, controllers can scramble fighters at the right time and place. The radar isn't perfect. Early sets have limits, especially judging altitude precisely and sorting out what kind of aircraft are in the formation, but it's enough to prevent surprise. And surprise was supposed to be a Luftwaffe weapon, so German crews cross the channel expecting to catch Britain flat-footed. And instead, they keep finding British fighters already climbing into position, already turning into the attack, already there. That eats away at confidence. Because if you're the attacker, one of the worst feelings in war is realizing the other side keeps meeting you like they've read your schedule. And radar is only half of it. Britain's second advantage is organization, the sector system. Fighter command splits the country into sectors, each with its own operations room coordinating local squadrons. When one sector gets hammered, nearby sectors can reinforce. When squadrons take losses, they can be pulled back, rebuilt, and rotated, while fresh units take their place. This creates an illusion the Germans misread badly. German intelligence watches individual squadrons get hit and assumes they're destroyed, but in reality, many aren't gone. They're shifted, replenished, and sent back. So from the Luftwaffe cockpit, it starts to look like Britain has endless reserves. Britain doesn't. Britain is stretching every resource it has, right up to the breaking point. But the system keeps it from snapping in the way Germany expects. Now pressure rises in the German command. By mid-August, Göring demands results. The Luftwaffe prepares a massive push meant to force the RAF into a losing fight. August 13th becomes the opening punch of that push, often called Eagle Day. Hundreds upon hundreds of sorties go in against airfields and key parts of Britain's air defense. The logic is straightforward. Hit the infrastructure, force fighter command to defend it, and destroy the fighters that show up. The attacks land hard. Airfields get battered, runways crater. Facilities are damaged, but two things go wrong for Germany. Two things that should terrify any strategist. First, the Luftwaffe loses heavily too, and the exchange rate doesn't favor the attacker. Britain is defending home ground with shorter flight times, quicker recovery, and pilots who can survive bailing out over friendly territory. Second, the parts of the system Germany most needs to silence, especially the radar network, prove harder to kill than expected. Tall steel towers don't always collapse neatly under bombing, and the operations elements can be repaired, rerouted, and kept working. So the German plan is strong in theory, violent in execution, and still not delivering the decisive break. And if you're Germany, that's the nightmare. Because every day the RAF survives is another day. Britain remains unconquered. Another day Sea Lion stays a dream instead of an invasion. If you're into WWII stories where the outcome hangs on decisions people actually made, hit the bell so you don't miss the next part, because now Germany is about to gamble bigger and the sky over Britain is about to get even more crowded. After Eagle Day, the Luftwaffe doubles down instead of backing off. From the German side, the logic still seems solid. Keep pounding fighter command until it can't stand up anymore. If Britain's fighters disappear, the channel becomes a highway for an invasion. If the fighters don't disappear, then the whole war plan hits a wall. So Germany ramps up. And then August 15th, 1940 arrives, the day the Luftwaffe tries to overwhelm Britain by sheer scale. German planners believe the RAF is stretched thin in the south. They think northern England is less protected, so they send major raids from bases in Norway and elsewhere, expecting lighter resistance up there. That assumption explodes in their face. British squadrons in the North and Midlands, often grouped under what was known as 13 Group, rise to meet the incoming formations and tear into them hard. By the end of the day, German losses are heavy, and the message filtering back to French airfields is not what Göring wants to hear. Not the RAF is finished. More like they're still everywhere. And the stories start sounding the same across different units. Bomber crews describe fighters diving through escorts like they don't care about the odds. They describe attacks that don't feel like a beaten force trying to survive, but like a force that believes it can win. Aggressive, coordinated, stubborn. That's the psychological shift the Luftwaffe can't afford. A strategy based on breaking morale starts failing the moment your enemy's morale hardens. Meanwhile, Britain keeps doing the unglamorous work that actually decides campaigns: repair, rotation, and control. Airfields get cratered, then patched. Squadrons get bloodied, then moved and rebuilt. Pilots who are shaken and exhausted are pulled back when possible, while others step forward. It's not pretty, it's not comfortable, but it keeps the machine running. Germany is trying to knock out a fighter force, Britain is defending a system that produces fighters, positions fighters, and recovers fighters. By late August, German leadership shifts targets again. If the RAF won't die in the air the way the Luftwaffe expects, then Germany will try to choke off the supply. Aircraft production. Bombers go after factories and industrial sites tied to fighter output, places connected to building Spitfires and Hurricanes, engines and parts, assembly and repair. On paper, it's a smart move. Destroy the production lines, and you eventually win the numbers game. But Britain has been thinking about this too, because Britain has no choice. Instead of putting everything in one easily targeted basket, production gets spread out. Work gets dispersed to shadow sites, smaller facilities, converted buildings, improvised shops. The idea is simple. If a bomb hits one location, it doesn't stop the whole chain. So Germany hits a factory, and Britain routes around the damage. German intelligence reports successful strikes, and British output doesn't collapse the way Germany needs it to. By early September, the Luftwaffe is frustrated. Fighter command is still operating. Radar is still feeding warnings. British fighters are still rising to meet raids. And the invasion clock is still ticking, because late autumn weather will make any cross-channel operation even riskier. Then comes the turning point, one of those decisions that looks powerful in the moment and disastrous in hindsight. On September 7, 1940, Hitler orders the Luftwaffe to shift toward bombing London directly. There's a strategic argument for it. Break civilian morale, pressure the government, force Britain to negotiate, make the capital suffer until the country quits. But it also does something else, something Germany can't undo once it starts. It eases the pressure on the RAF's most important assets. When the Luftwaffe focuses less on fighter command's airfields and operational infrastructure, Britain gets breathing room. Cratered runways are repaired, damaged facilities are restored, aircraft are redistributed, exhausted pilots get a little time to sleep and reset. The system stabilizes, and the effect on British morale isn't what Germany expects either. London doesn't break in a clean, simple way that ends wars. The bombing is horrifying, but it also hardens resolve. Instead of panic turning into surrender, it turns into anger and endurance. For German bomber crews, the London raids become a grim assignment. The city has concentrated defenses, anti-aircraft fire, searchlights, and determined fighters. The routes are dangerous. Losses continue. And now, instead of steadily erasing fighter command, Germany is trading aircraft and crews for destruction that doesn't stop the RAF from intercepting tomorrow. By mid-September, the Luftwaffe is still telling itself it can deliver one decisive blow. Clear weather becomes the signal. Good visibility means big raids. Big raids mean the RAF can finally be overwhelmed. That belief sets the stage for September 15, 1940. From the German side, it looks like the moment to finish the job. Large formations assemble over France. Bombers grouped tight, fighter escorts layered above and around them. The target is London again. The numbers are meant to crush the defense through volume. But here's what the Luftwaffe is walking into. And it still doesn't fully grasp it. Britain isn't guessing anymore. Britain isn't searching the skies hoping to get lucky. Chain Home sees the buildup. Reports flow to plotting tables. Sector controllers begin moving pieces. Instead of scattering fighters in random patrols, the RAF is concentrating them into interceptions. Spitfires climb from multiple stations. Hurricanes rise from others. Squadrons are vectored into place. Time to meet the raid in the air with altitude where possible, and numbers where it matters. Germany crosses the channel expecting light resistance that grows weaker by the week. What it meets is an organized storm. And when a bomber formation expects a few fighters and instead sees fighters coming from different directions, diving, climbing, cutting in from angles that force gunners and escorts to split attention, that's not just dangerous. That's demoralizing, because it says the RAF is not a dying force. It's still a functioning system, still capable of massing strength. By the time the first wave is in contact, the German hope of an easy breakthrough is already slipping. Bombers start dropping early or off target just to get lighter and get out. Escorts get dragged into fights they can't fully control. The formation's clean shape fractures under pressure, and the afternoon is still coming. By the end of the day, German losses are heavy enough to change the conversation from how soon we win to whether we can win at all, and that's the real disaster for Germany, because Sea Lion doesn't need perfect victory. It needs one thing: reliable air superiority. If the Luftwaffe can't guarantee that over southern England, if it can't keep the RAF down, then sending troops across the Channel isn't bold. It's suicide. In Part 3, you'll see what happens after September 15th, how quickly the invasion dream collapses, why Britain's survival changes the entire war, and how the story gets remembered in a way that quietly steals credit from the people who actually won the fight. After September 15, 1940, something breaks inside the German plan, not in a dramatic one speech, one surrender way. More like a cold realization spreading through command rooms and flight lines. This is not going the way it was supposed to. For weeks, German intelligence kept saying the RAF was almost done. For weeks, Luftwaffe crews kept seeing British fighters rise anyway. And on September 15th, the RAF doesn't just show up, it shows up in numbers big enough to wreck the entire assumption that fighter command is collapsing. That day matters for a simple reason. If Britain can still throw large, coordinated interceptions after months of sustained pressure, then the RAF isn't about to disappear, which means the Luftwaffe cannot promise what an invasion absolutely requires: control of the skies. And without that, Operation Sea Lion is not a daring move. It's a death sentence. So within days, the invasion plan gets pushed off, then pushed off again, until it's effectively shelved. The key point isn't that Germany lacks soldiers or ambition. The key point is that Germany cannot safely protect troop transports and supply lines across the Channel under daylight attack. A cross-channel invasion under hostile air power would be a massacre. That is the RAF's victory in plain language. Britain stays unconquered because Germany can't win the air war. And if Britain stays in the war, the entire war changes. It's hard to overstate that. If Britain falls in the autumn of 1940, there's no big Allied return to Europe later. There's no secure base for a massive bombing campaign against German industry. There's no staging ground for the eventual liberation of Western Europe. The map of the war, and the world that follows, looks radically different. Britain's survival keeps the possibility of defeating Nazi Germany alive. That's why the Battle of Britain isn't just a British story. It's a turning point for everyone who ends up fighting on the Allied side later, including America. Here's the part that gets uncomfortable when you look at how WWII is commonly remembered. In popular culture, especially in the United States, the big emotional peaks of the war tend to be offensives, landings, invasions, breakthroughs. The camera loves motion, it loves forward momentum, it loves flags going up on beaches and tanks rolling through towns. A defensive victory, especially one fought in the air with no sweeping ground advance, is harder to package, so the Battle of Britain often gets treated like a prologue, like Britain was just holding on until the real fight began. But that narrative quietly flips cause and effect. The truth is, without Britain's 1940 victory, there may not have been a later Western Front to join. That's not a knock on American contribution. The United States contributes enormously once it enters the war. It brings industrial power, manpower, shipping, air power, and a second major theater of pressure that reshapes everything. But historically, those later contributions depend on one earlier fact: Britain did not fall. The Battle of Britain is the reason there's still a Britain to use as a partner, a base, and a platform. And when you look at post-war reflections, even from Germans, you see a kind of blunt respect for what fighter command accomplished. German pilots and commanders understood what it meant when the Luftwaffe failed to destroy the RAF. They understood that losing air superiority over Britain didn't just delay an invasion, it removed the option entirely, because air power wasn't a sideshow, it was the gatelock on the entire strategy. So how did Britain win? In practical terms, not through magical technology, not because Britain had more planes. Britain didn't. It wins through a combination of systems, geography, and endurance. First, the radar network gives Britain warning time. It's not perfect radar, but it is enough to prevent consistent surprise and to conserve fighter strength. Instead of wandering the skies burning fuel, the RAF can scramble with purpose. Second, the sector system, the organization of fighter command, makes the defense resilient. Squadrons can be coordinated, reinforced, rotated. The Luftwaffe keeps trying to count destroyed units the way you count broken equipment, but fighter command is constantly shifting pieces and rebuilding them. It doesn't feel like an endless supply. It feels like a force that refuses to stop showing up. Third, Britain has a brutal advantage that sounds simple, but matters a lot. It's fighting over home territory. When a British pilot bails out over southern England, there's a good chance he lives and can fly again. When a German crew bails out over England, they're captured. That difference turns losses into long-term attrition for the attacker. There's also the human factor that doesn't show up neatly in charts. The Luftwaffe is on an offensive schedule. Its pilots keep flying until they're shot down, killed, or worn down. Fighter command pilots are pushed extremely hard too, but the system tries, whenever possible, to rotate, rest, and recover men so they can return to the cockpit. And then there's motivation. For Germany, this is conquest, another step in a run of victories. For Britain, this is survival. There is no fallback line behind the channel, no second island, no retreat that keeps the war going. If fighter command breaks, Britain faces invasion and occupation. The stakes are immediate and personal, and everyone involved knows it. That kind of pressure can destroy people, or it can make them relentless. And in 1940, it makes enough of them relentless long enough for the Luftwaffe to run out of time, options, and confidence. The final accounting underlines the cost and the imbalance. During the Battle of Britain, fighter command loses hundreds of aircrew killed, often cited around 544. The Luftwaffe loses far more aircrew killed or captured, often cited around 2,698. Those are not small gaps. That's the attacker bleeding trained people it can easily replace at the same pace, while the defender recovers pilots and keeps the system moving. By October 1940, with the invasion effectively canceled, the Luftwaffe shifts more toward night bombing, an admission that large-scale daylight operations have become too costly. Britain has not won in the sense of marching anywhere. Britain has won by not breaking. And that sounds modest until you understand the consequence. Not breaking in 1940 is what keeps the entire future Allied victory possible. So when people say, Britain just held on until America arrived, that's the part that needs correction. Britain didn't merely hold on. Britain won the battle that kept the war alive long enough for anyone else to join it. If you want more WWII stories that separate the myth from what actually happened, make sure you're subscribed, because the battles that decide everything are often the ones that don't look like victory at the time. Sometimes the most important move isn't taking ground. It's refusing to give up the last ground you have. Sometimes survival isn't just survival. Sometimes survival is the win that makes every later win possible.